Just kind of like we agreed to hold it. You still it's a contract, and we even though it's executory, and it is still a valid and binding contract. Obviously, the owner or the purchaser should be treated as the owner. When do we not worry about equitable conversion? When doesn't it apply? Well, if you have an enforceable agreement, equitable conversion doesn't apply. So what that means is the contract for sale violates the statute of frauds, correct? Therefore, the purchaser has no equitable rights. When there is a condition precedent to enforceability that has not been met, then the equitable conversion doesn't apply. This is a gray area, but when you look at, for example, one of the conditions will be that I get money, that I get credit, that I get approved for a note. Until that note is approved, or at least the purchaser is told you qualify, you have qualify for the note. Until that point, equitable conversion doesn't apply. The fact that you did not pay money does not prevent the application of equitable conversion. While the seller is still in possession, he has the right to rent, profits, pays rent until the time of closing. However, the seller cannot damage the property and should take all necessary steps to prevent the decay of the property. Again, what big word here is waste. Waste. Take time. When you're studying, we don't have too much time here to be getting into the theory of waste, but pay attention to it. What's one of the practical implications? Let's just review this quickly. Of equitable conversion. Again, the seller dies before we close. We haven't, we don't have a final contract. I don't have to buy the house. Well, still have a binding contract. Maybe executory, but it still is a binding contract. So somebody has to pay. Now, if they want to sell it after, doesn't matter. They have to pay. So, who's going to pay? Well, whoever has the risk of loss comes out losing in this process. Under the majority jurisdictions, the risk of loss is on the purchaser. Risk of loss is on the purchaser. But let's talk about a little quirk here. The purchaser has to take the land. The only exception will be if the house is totally destroyed. If the house is totally destroyed, that's a principle of contract. It's impossible to have performance. So let's say the damage is substantial but not total. The buyer still has to buy. Because the risk of loss is on the buyer. The buyer still has to buy. Now, if there's total destruction, buyer can say, no, we had a contract, right? It's impossible to perform. There's no use to me of a lot without a house. That's not what I bargained for. Total destruction, I don't have to buy it. If the damage is partial or not substantial, doesn't matter. The buyer has to proceed with the purchase. So how do I protect myself? You know, if I'm buying a house and there is a fire, and now the house is going to require $100,000 worth of repairs, not enough to invalidate the sale, I'm going to get a house that's half burned, right? That's not worth $100,000, and I'm going to end up having to pay $200,000 because what? Equitable conversion tells me I bear the risk of loss. So how do I protect myself from that? Insurance. Insurance. So whoever bears the risk of loss should have insurance on the property in the event that the property is destroyed. What if the seller has insurance too? Well, at that point, the seller has to reduce the price of the house for whatever the difference in damages is, or he has to give the buyer the proceeds of that insurance policy up to the amount of the house. That's the risk of loss. In general, a seller has a duty to disclose defects. Seller cannot intentionally misrepresent facts about the property to induce the buyer to buy. We are going crazy in my section with this. Induce. What does that sound like? Inducement. Seller cannot misrepresent facts about the property to induce the buyer to buy. This is fraud. Fraud in the inducement. Fraud in the inducement. For there to be fraud, the statement, the misrepresentation has to be false. The misrepresentation has to concern a material fact. The misrepresentation is reasonably relied on by the buyer to make the purchase. The misrepresentation was meant with the intent to induce the buyer to purchase, and there is damages as a result. Let me say it again. Misrepresentation, seller cannot intentionally misrepresent facts to the buyer. If there is a misrepresentation of facts, that is fraud. And we will call it fraud in the inducement. What are the elements required for there to be fraud? The seller made misrepresentations that were false, or representations that were false. The representation concerned a material fact. What that means is, the fact is one that had the buyer known that fact may have affected their desire to buy the property. The buyer reasonably relied on those misrepresentations when making the decision to purchase. The misrepresentations were made with the intent to induce the buyer to purchase, and there are damages as a result. Be careful, because just like in contract law, the issue here is, was there a misrepresentation or was it puffing? Was the seller just making an exaggerated, statement? This is the best house in the block. I'm selling you the most efficient car. this is the most efficient house in the neighborhood. There is a gray line between exaggeration, puffing, or misrepresentation. The modern trend is that where there is a condition which has been created by the seller, which materially impairs the value of the contract, and it is within the knowledge of the seller, but as a result of the nature of that condition, the buyer would not have discovered it, couldn't have discovered it by prudent, reasonable exercise of care, then the buyer is in breach. Buyer is in breach. So the buyer has a duty not to commit fraud by means of misrepresentation. The buyer also has or is making a promise, a warranty with respect to the quality of the house or the sale of the house, the apartment, the land. As an implied warranty, it accompanies the sale of a new house by a builder, developer of housing. Listen to what I said. I said an implied warranty of quality. In every sale, there is an implied warranty of quality whenever the sale is made by a builder, developer, or any other merchant of housing. What is a warranty? This house was built in a workmanlike manner, which is fit for human habitation. It was built in a workmanlike manner. Now, how do we look at what a workmanlike manner is? The market. If most developers use pine, which have a life expectancy of 25 years, and that's what the developer uses, that's fine. That's workmanlike. If they use the type of nails that most other builders use, the type of grass, I mean everything, if they're using what is available in the market, then they meet the requirement. It doesn't have to be perfect. Be careful. Making a warranty of I'm selling you a property that was built in a workmanlike manner doesn't mean it's perfect. Doesn't mean it's perfect. Wood is going to warp. The fact that you're using pine that should last 25 years doesn't mean that one board is not going to warp. So it doesn't have to be perfect. The trend under the majority rule, the workmanlike warranty, the warranty of quality did not only apply to those that were in privity of contract. What that meant is the builder, I buy the property, he's making that warranty to me, but once I sell the house, right, he wasn't making that warranty to them. He didn't run with the land because of the issue of privity. That's the majority rule. However, there is a trend now, a modern trend, which doesn't make it a majority, to imply the warranty to subsequent purchasers, or at least when it is assigned. in those jurisdictions that allow the assignment of rights, I can assign, when the subsequent purchasers buy property that is not directly from the builder, right? The seller can guarantee the new buyer, right, the workmanlike warranty based on my right. I'm assigning it to you. Of course, it cannot last forever. There's limits, and that's found within local statutes. Texas, the workmanlike, the quality, the warranty of good quality, maybe 25 years, maybe 30, I don't know. That's local law. So, basically, that's the contract for sale. What do we have? Well, we have a executory contract which gives the buyer the rights of the owner without making you the owner. Those rights are pretty much protected by the doctrine of equitable conversion. Now, even though I don't have a right to possess the land, correct? The seller has to maintain the property in the way that it was when we entered into the agreement. I don't have the right to move into the property because it's not mine. The seller can still rent the property. The seller can still make money. The seller still has to pay the taxes. The seller has to make sure that the property doesn't deteriorate while you're waiting. We know that what happens if the seller dies. We know what happens if the buyer dies. We know that the seller is making warranties. I did not misrepresent any facts, material facts, and we know what that means. I am giving you a house that follows the reasonable practices of building. It's in good quality, free of defects. All those things go into the contract for sale. What happens if any of those things, if there's a breach of any of all these responsibilities? Well, what kind of remedies are there available? Well, damages. The difference between the market value of the property at the time of the closing and the purchase. So, you decide you're not going to buy because the house is in poor quality, correct? Or you find out the day of closing that there's something wrong with the quality of the house and you want damages, right? You will get the difference between the market value at the time of the closing and the purchase price. Now, I've asked that several times to my students, and we keep working on that. At the time of the closing, that's what you use for the value. The value at the time of the closing. If the purchaser breaches the sale agreement, basically the seller keeps the deposit, generally, or the seller will recover liquidated damages if they were included in there. And you know what liquidated damages are. They cannot be punitive. Seller in the contract for sale states in the event that you breach, right? You don't show up at closing, you must pay me $25,000 plus, or return, or I will keep the deposit. The question comes, why doesn't he get damages? I don't know. I mean, it seems like he still has the house. And the purpose of damages is what? to put him back to the position that he was. He still has the house, right? And he has liquidated damages. So he probably, liquidated damages are probably determined in terms of if you have a house that's losing market value, right? So you can use that to sell the house again and still be making money. What else can you seek as a remedy? Specific performance. Or you can elect to rescind the contract. Damages, specific performance, rescission. Damages, specific performance, rescission. I suggest that now that I just outlined that, you may want to sit down and go deeper into those areas. We don't have time to really spend more time than that, but you know that those things, those are the remedies: damages, specific performance, and rescission. Again, rely on your contracts. So what's damages? Your contracts is pretty close, your contract lasts, and you spend a lot more time in contracts doing remedies than we did or should do in property. So now, nobody breached. The house didn't burn. There were no misrepresentations. Everybody shows up to the closing. Everything is good. All the conditions are met. Buyer has his approved note. Property is still in good shape. Nobody's living there. There's no waste. Everything looks good. So now we're going to make the transfer from the executory contract to the final deal. And the instrument that transfers an estate or any other interest in land during the owner's lifetime is the deed. That's the instrument. If I want to transfer any interest in land, if I want to transfer any interest in land during my lifetime, I will use a deed. Now, listen to what I said. If I want to transfer any interest in land, estate, or any other interest in land. Remember, there are things that are interest in land that we've spoken of, easements, right? Profits, all the stuff, they're interest in land. Anytime I want to transfer an interest in land while I'm alive, the instrument is the deed. Saying while I'm alive is because I may want to do it after I die, and in that case, the instrument of transfer is what? A will, not a deed. The students had a question in the test. As easy as that. Owner of land wants to transfer the land. He did so by virtue of a will, or did he do so by virtue of a deed, or by virtue of the contract for sale? And a lot of my students, what is it? The well or the cliff? Well, natural monuments will prevail over artificial ones. So if he says to the well at the edge of the cliff, and the well is 100 feet from the cliff, the boundary will be the cliff, the natural monument. Natural and artificial monuments both prevail over distances. From the road, 100 yards to the well at the edge of the cliff. And it is 200 yards from the well? Well, first of all, if the question was between the well and the edge of the cliff would prevail. But in this one, there's a problem between distances and the well. One said 50 feet, the other one said 100 feet, right? The well would prevail over the distance. The deed not only has to meet the statute of frauds, it has to be delivered. It has to be delivered. The deed is delivered if at the time the deed is conferred, there is an immediate, the intent to immediately transfer the property and make it irrevocable. If that's my intent, then there is a delivery. I am giving you this deed for you to look it over and tell me if you will be interested in buying my property. That is not delivery. Because when I gave you the deed, I gave it to you for the purpose of you reviewing it. At that moment, I didn't intend the property to transfer. I'm going to put this deed in a box for the bank to hold until my son graduates from law school. I did not intend to transfer that property to my son, did I? The only thing I intended was to put it in the box. I can still change my mind. Now, if I tell the banker, here is the deed, it is his now, right? But hold it. That's a different story. Because the moment I gave it to the banker, I said, at this moment, if anybody comes to pick this deed, even me, he's the only one that can get it, not me. You have that sad case in the book where they put their names in the envelope. The grantor put their name on the envelope, and the court said because he put their name on the envelope, that meant that he was one of the people authorized to open the envelope. Therefore, he didn't transfer the property. There was no delivery because he still was one of the people that could open the envelope and take out the deed. So there has to be an immediate attempt to transfer the property, and that has to be irrevocable. Irrevocable. Now there are two general rules. It is possible for me to have physical control over something that has not been delivered. The fact that I physically have it is evidence that is mine, but that can be rebutted. I got this in my hands. This is evidence that this was delivered to me. Correct? But any of you can get up and say, but I have proof that he said after class he was going to give it to me. Right? The person that gave it to me was going to give it to somebody else. Evidence that I was just going to hold it. So the presumption is, if it's in my hands, there was delivery, but that presumption can be rebutted. The fact that it's not in my hands is evidence that it has not been delivered. However, that can be rebutted. Dear daughter, calling you on the phone to visit for the next 3 weeks. How are you? I cannot come to see you, but I have some good news for you. I have just signed the deed over to you for the house, and we'll talk later about when you move in and when we move out. I'll bring you the deed later. I die. My daughter then gets into a fight with my son. My son says, you don't have it. Where is it? And you say, I don't have it with me, but I'm going to introduce evidence that in fact, even though I don't have it, there was an immediate transfer. And that when he called me on the phone, he actually intended that I get it, and at that point he gave up all his rights, therefore there was a lien. Those of you that want to talk to my class, find out what they were laughing about, the deed in the box. That's something to be talked about later. What are the covenants that are made? What are covenants of title? Promises by a grantor in regards to the title the grantor is given. They're optional, but some jurisdictions imply the covenants in all the deeds unless they're expressly rejected. The only one that's not implied is for the assurances. So in some jurisdictions, and I would say generally, they will all be implied except the covenant of further assurances. Once I deliver that deed, once you have accepted that deed, if that deed meets the statute of frauds, and I immediately deliver it to you, I give it to you with immediate intent to give you the property and absolute control of it over you, not me, the grantee can only sue me for defects on the title based on the covenant of this deed. Any promises made by the grantor in the purchase and sale agreement are superseded, are extinguished, unless we make provisions in the deed. This also has been a source of conflictive information. I promised you that I was going to deliver a house that was built properly. Correct? We close the deal, I give you the deed, you find out that was not the case. Can you sue me on the contract for sale? No. You can only sue me if you can find a covenant in the deed that made a promise that the house was going to be built in good quality. But I cannot rely on the purchase and sale agreement. This is called merging. Merging. All right? So, tomorrow we're going to talk about marketable title. We're going to talk about the covenants, the remedies, and hopefully we start recording statutes. And if we need to go to Wednesday on recording statutes, we'll go. We can do it tomorrow, fine. But that will be the end of what we'll be doing here. We don't have time to do other possession. And we unfortunately don't have time to do covenants. I think that all activities should cease and desist no later than Wednesday. So the plan is tomorrow we're going to do covenants, marketable covenants with the title, marketability, and we are going to hopefully quickly go to recording statutes. If there's anything left, and I hope not, we do it Wednesday. But I hope to finish the work. Okay? Have a good day.